here we go again. The one game that anybody believes might have a chance at taking Game of the Year this year, the only game that anyone believes might actually stand a chance against Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom, Starfield. Of course, going into this, everyone knows, okay, this game has a lot of problems, okay? It's coming out soon in the next couple of weeks or something. The problems are becoming evident. People are like pointing things out. Like there's a loading screen thing. Oh man, I'm sorry. I just got off a bad shift at work. I have no idea what I'm doing. Okay. Right now, there are a lot of people trying to pretend as if Starfield has a chance at winning Game of the Year from Tears of the Kingdom. They are damage controlling. They are making up excuses to be excited for the game. They're overhyping it. They're trying to say it looks better than it really does. They're ignoring all of the very blatant issues. And what's more, they're coming after people like me who are addressing our concerns with this game. We are openly, talking about Starfield, how it can't compete with Tears of the Kingdom, or even really like any other Nintendo game this year. Like how it clearly has like the Bethesda problems, how like, the tone is messed up, like the gameplay doesn't look good. Like nothing about this game looks impressive in the least, right? But this game, much like Baldur's Gate 3, much like Final Fantasy 16, much like Street Fighter 6, much like Diablo 4, has to be pushed as one of the biggest games this year. Because when you get right down to it, the gaming industry has nothing else. We're at the point now where like all of these big juggernaut games, stuff like Forspoken, stuff like Hi-Fi Rush, stuff like Diablo 4, stuff like Final Fantasy 16, stuff like Starfield, the new IP from Bethesda, the creators of Skyrim, which a decade ago was the game that proved, quote, 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 proved that Zelda was dead and buried, that Nintendo couldn't compete in the modern era, and that the Zelda formula was outdated, right? Skyrim was the game that people weaponized against Nintendo, weaponized against the Wii, weaponized against Zelda specifically. Like, I remember people demonizing Skyward Sword, coming after one of the best Zelda games ever made, purely because, it's not open world. I remember that happening. Right, I'm still mad. To this day, one of the big reasons why I still openly talk about how much I love Skyward Sword is because like how much the backlash toward that game was unwarranted, right? Like it was completely fake. It was completely ridiculous. Nobody showed that game any respect at all, and it is a top tier Zelda game. Like I love The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword. Skyrim is trash. We'll never beat it. Don't care to play it again. It's just plain boring, right? And Starfield is more of the same, honestly. Like with none of the enthusiasm, none of the hype, none of the optimism. But because we're in a situation where the industry literally has nothing else, everyone is bending over backwards trying to make excuses for this game, trying to say that like, oh, it might be good, or that like it's a new IP, or that Bethesda has never steered us wrong before, which is a lie, by the way. They haven't put out anything culturally relevant since Skyrim, over a decade ago. Like, this game is shaping up to be a major disappointment in every way, shape, and form, but much like how they downplayed the failure of Final Fantasy 16, like you have plenty of shills right now on Twitter and on YouTube or whatever, like trying to say the game did fine, when in reality it was a catastrophic failure that is likely going to sink Square Enix and by extension ruin the PlayStation brand, which has like tied itself to Final Fantasy. Like this game proves that that the PlayStation 5 is a failure, right? Right? Like the industry shills are just downplaying all the criticisms for this game. They're going after people like Grums, the ex-Blizzard guy who was pro Gamergate, who has been a real legend, I think, in the Western gaming sphere. Like really, really like ahead of the curve, talking about like all the problems at Blizzard and like the problems with like modern Western game development in general, and being like a really big like advocate for like making a change. Making games fun. And I would just like to the people I've seen criticizing this tweet, from this individual, talking about Starfield, like, and it's something weird to do with like the title screen and how lazy it was. Like, so many people were trying to like make fun of it, but like, it really is true. You can really tell like the passion and like the creativity of like developers when you look at like a startup screen, right? I still love like the title screens for games like Ocarina of Time and Metroid Prime, right? Like those title screens really stick out to me as just being like something wonderful, something creative, something charming. Like they really stick out to you, right? Like it gets you hyped to play the game. That's actually one of my minor gripes with Breath of the Wild actually. And Tears of the Kingdom is that the title screens are just terrible. They're awful. Like abysmally bad. And like I haven't really talked about that before because it really doesn't matter, but like if you look at the title screen and like notice something like this, like why not point it out? Like why not acknowledge that like yeah, this very blatant thing that would be easy to fix, make easy to make interesting. Like it just goes to show you that the developers don't care. Like how many of us like booted up Super Mario 64 for the first time and then like spent like 5 minutes or so like playing around with that Mario face, right? And that's a really good memory for a lot of people, right? Like this idea that like, oh, the title screen doesn't matter, completely asinine. You don't understand video games. You don't respect the artistry. You don't respect how the little things do matter. And it's why you're so fixated on hyping up like every big AAA game because you have no idea of what a quality product is actually like, right? You have never played a good video game in your life if you're even remotely excited for Starfield because those of us who do like video games, those of us who are like, gearing up to play like stuff like Bomb Rush Cyberpunk or like Sports Story or Grim Grimoire or Super Mario Bros. Wonder later this year. Like like those there are those of us who are playing like great, crazy, innovative, fun video games all the time. Games that you, the casual, the plebeian, the neophyte, will never even hear of. Right? Like you're excited for Starfield, you're going to go out and buy Starfield because your life is empty. It is meaningless. You have no idea what it means to be a real gamer. And that's why you so aggressively go after people like Rums, go after people like me, go after people who enjoy Nintendo games in general for like, pointing out the simple fact that Nintendo is superior. And that is what this is all about, by the way, right? This is what people desperately want to do. It's why they've been hyping up Diablo 4, why they've been trying to like make Baldur's Gate 3 a thing. It's already forgotten. Why they're trying to make Starfield a thing. They're trying to diminish what Nintendo has accomplished with Tears of the Kingdom. Like, the internet does not want to admit that Tears of the Kingdom is not only one of the best games of the year, it is an innovative masterpiece that will be impossible for the industry at large to replicate. You cannot do what Tears of the Kingdom does with its open world formula and vehicle building in any game out there. Right? Anybody who dismisses this game as a clone of Nuts and Bolts is completely delusional. You have no idea what Nuts and Bolts is like because you've never played it. You have no idea what Breath of the Wild is like because you've never played it. You have no idea what Tears of the Kingdom is like because you've never played it. Like the fact that so many of these people still like will try to claim that Tears of the Kingdom is an expansion to Breath of the Wild is laughable because if you actually play both, like I have, you understand like the intricate differences and like the structure and like just everything that the games are shockingly different. Shockingly, considering they reuse the same map. And I'll just too many people just don't want to admit it. They want to like just pull the wool over their eyes and just pretend it's not happening. Pretend it's not true. Pretend that it's not 2023 and Nintendo Switch is still the industry leader. And not only is it still the industry leader, it's in a position where it will be indefinitely. There will be no like smartphone renaissance. You're never going to see people like play all of their games on smartphones. There isn't going to be a big new console swooping in and like stealing the market share. There's never again going to be a PlayStation situation in which a giant corporation comes in, buys up all the third-party support, pays off companies like Konami, Square Enix, Capcom to like promote their like really terrible brand, right? Like it just can't happen again. You know, It will never happen again. We're in this situation where Nintendo has won the console war, and we are still seeing people refuse to admit it. We are still seeing people like pretend that like the PlayStation can compete, that the Xbox can compete, that the PC can compete. But when in reality, all anyone can talk about or play are Nintendo games, right? This is the industry we're in now. This is the situation. And because Nintendo has been around so long, because it's so culturally relevant, because it's so ingrained in the culture, like it isn't going away anytime soon, right? There is, I think, no disputing this, that Starfield is not going to win Game of the Year. There are too many people like trying to think it's like up in the air, that it's debatable, or that like no. Not even close. I have seen nothing from Starfield that even looks remotely interesting. And now going into release window, seeing all the problems, seeing people talk about bugs, talk about like how the game has a loading screen when you go up into the atmosphere. Even No Man's Sky got that right. Like seeing all the problems with like the writing and the gameplay loop and the structure, and seeing that like I think when all is said and done, Tears of the Kingdom is a better game, a bigger game, has more things to do in its open world setting, and there's just it's all just falling apart, right? It's all coming down. It's all collapsing among itself. Like I really wonder just how much longer we can keep up. They can keep up this farce that Bethesda is some powerhouse game developer, because they haven't produced anything good. They've never produced anything good. They're owned by Xbox now, and which guarantees that they'll get worse. And more, I feel like Nintendo is eclipsing them, and they're like their own wheelhouse. You know, they have Xenoblade, they have Zelda, they have like the Mario games, they have like Pokemon, right? All of which do what like Bethesda does, like infinitely better, even if the industry at large does not admit it, right? There is nothing in the world that can stop Nintendo, right? There's nothing that can stop Pokemon. There's nothing that can stop Zelda. There's nothing that can stop Mario. There's nothing that can stop Animal Crossing. There's nothing that can stop Fire Emblem. These franchises are going to get bigger, more popular, more successful, and more profitable. While your favorite franchises, stuff like Starfield, stuff like Diablo 4, stuff like Street Fighter, like all of that falls by the back burner because it simply cannot compete with what Nintendo is doing.